whatever it takes was quite a significant moment in Europe in terms of turning investor sentiment around. To what extent has Simsek been successful in allaying investors' concerns about what happens next with the Turkish economy on back of all the political developments over the last week?
I think we're definitely seeing a recovery as of yesterday, right after Finance Minister Mehmet Simsek and Central Bank Governor Fatih Karahan held an international teleconference call with investors, with some 4,000 people attending the call. They've reassured markets that they'll do whatever it takes, just like you mentioned, and the lira would be at the forefront of their steps and measures. Now, we've seen an array of measures, especially from the central bank last week, that included a surprise rate hike to one of its key rates, and that has really tried to calm the markets and ensure that locals particularly stay in the lira. Stocks particularly were top performers yesterday, and the currency seems stable after last week's massive sell-off. And we've seen good performance in Turkey's sovereign dollar bonds as well. So it looks like there's definitely a recovery, and the remarks from the officials are helping soothe concern and bolstering the Turkish assets.
Yeah, some stabilization coming through, both verbal intervention and, of course, the central bank has taken action. So that's helping. Just give us the latest, though, on what is actually happening on the ground in terms of protests and what the opposition are saying in terms of next steps and how they're thinking of regrouping.
I think a number of things to look at there. Student protests particularly have continued yesterday as well. Some of that has been led by the opposition, who's called people to the streets since Istanbul Mayor Ekrem İmamoğlu's detention and later arrest. But the main opposition party chairman, Özgür Özel, said yesterday that the protest by the square in Istanbul's municipality, where people have been gathering for the last few days, would be the final one there. And they would pause and do some other gatherings, but on Saturday they would once again hold a massive rally, this time on the Asian side in Istanbul. Today, the Istanbul municipality will also elect a new mayor following İmamoğlu's suspension. That is critical, whether that person is actually going to be elected, democratically by the council, or whether that's going to be someone who's closer perhaps to the government and President Erdogan. And speaking of President Erdogan, he also met with a group of students yesterday evening, and he talked about the protests, actually warning students who are attending them, saying they should not be used by the opposition, and reiterated his remarks that this was street terror. But at the same time, the president, who has distanced himself from İmamoğlu's case, said that Turkey is a very well-functioning democracy. And these things we have seen in the past week were fueled by the opposition, and he lashed out at the opposition for triggering volatility both on the ground in terms of protests as well in the financial markets.